And now please welcome Craig Miller to our pulpit.
Well, that was, I was thinking that was close to poor planning on my part. I was shaky on the chalice lighting, and then I started tearing up, and I was like, what was I thinking? But that was beautiful, Ken. Thank you. It meant a lot. It really did. And it's really nice to be back in this space. Technically, I was a member of UUCJ maybe 15-ish years ago. I still work on Sundays, but my wife joined with our young kids to give them great exposure, and her knowing that I grew up a Unitarian has sure had played an influence, but she did that all on her own. And so anyway, it's nice to be back here. It's been a while, and we certainly made some good friendships back then. So thank you again. So my talk today, I'm hopefully going to give you guys a pretty good idea of the work we do at the Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens with manatee conservation. I tell guests all the time, we love our manatees, but we want them out of there as quickly as possible. We want to see them back out in the wild. So next, please. I'm going to run through, I'm going to tell you about a couple of milestones I'll be going through. Number one, it's already been mentioned, but we started our rescue team back in July of 2006, and that's when everything really started for us. Next, please. And then in 2008, FWC, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, who they oversee rescues and carcass recoveries. We had already been working with them for a couple of years, but they needed a new location. Their lease was up at Cecil Field, so they relocated to the Jacksonville Zoo site. We sold them a modular building for about $1, and we don't charge them any rent, so it's a great relationship, great collaboration. Next, please. And then, big milestone, August 30th, 2017, is when we received our first 2 patients into our critical care center. That's Cassie and Buckeye right there, and so next, please. We'll go back to them later. So going back to our rescue team, it was really established to give our staff an opportunity to get involved in local conservation. That's what a lot of this is all about, you know, helping animals in the wild. Of course, the zoo does great work educating, supporting conservation, but to be directly involved in a local program like this was pretty rewarding. Next, please. And then, of course, just to give you an idea of the reasons for a lot of this work, the rescues, we're at the northern end of the manatee range, so we deal with a lot of cold stress cases in the wintertime. It's really our busiest time of the year at the zoo is the wintertime. There's also crab trap entanglements. We've dealt with those directly. Fishing line entanglements are terrible because once that groove starts to be cut in the pectoral flipper, it attracts or it easily gets hooked on other fishing lines, so they continue to get hooked on more and more fishing line, and it's really, really terrible if you don't address that. Orphan calves is a big one, and of course boat strikes, both blunt force trauma from the hull and then propeller wounds as well, both of those things. Next, please. And there's unusual things. A bicycle tire was on this animal who was sighted in Jacksonville, Fernandina Beach, Blue Spring. I think it went on for a good 1.5 years. So there were sightings, but never long enough where we could dispatch a rescue team to go get that animal. But eventually, good ending to that one because that animal was seen without the tire on it. So sometimes it works out. Next, please. And just to give you more idea, this is at the JEA power plant intake canal. We had a calf, an orphan calf in there many years ago before we had our facility. We literally dropped the net down there and this calf swam into the net because otherwise, and it just was luck because it would have been a really difficult capture there. So next, please. Just shows you some more pictures walking on those girders. Next, please. And then, as mentioned in that great film, they average about 1,000, 1,200 pounds. Here's a 2,700-pound manatee that our team helped rescue back in 2007 down in Daytona. They get big, but again, they average 1,000, 1,200 pounds. Next. And it's not just manatee work. This is Bird Island, which is between Big Talbot and Amelia Island, Tidal Island, and this beaked whale carcass was partially buried, and one of our staff, Cheryl, is out there in the boonies, just trying to excavate a little bit so they can get some tissue samples. There's no way they were going to drag that carcass anywhere else. Next, please. And then, of course, a big part of what we do, much more than rescues, is help the state, help FWC with carcass recovery. I'm on a weekly call and carcass throughout the state. I mean, there are multiple carcasses every week being recovered. And I had to get my daughter in there. This is years ago. She just got married in June, so this is a long time ago. But this is right here at the Arlington Marina, right down the street, and we don't live far from here. And so I think it was a Sunday, and everyone was off, and the family met me there, including our dog, and Callie was up there on the dock, and you can see sort of my head poking out behind the law enforcement officer. But yeah, unfortunately, a big part of the work we do is carcass recovery. But we learn from all those carcasses, so we collect samples, and so it's important stuff. Next, please. Just to give you an idea, this is about our critical care center, and no, I didn't make a mistake on the bottom, but there are 3 main critical care facilities right now. SeaWorld certainly does the lion's share. They have 30-something animals right now, followed by Zoo Tampa with 20-something, and then our max is 6 animals, 5 to 6, so we're small. But we used to have Miami Seaquarium down there in South Florida, and they no longer are working with manatees at all. So we have a little bit of a hole down there, but luckily there's more partners coming on, including Zoo Miami. So that hole will be filled relatively soon, but right now those critical animals have to go up to either SeaWorld or Zoo Tampa. Next, please. But yeah, so our critical care facility, again, we received our first 2 patients in August of 2017. Just to give you a quick idea, this is the shot's taken from behind, but that square pool is our medical pool with a lift floor. So any animals in that pool, when we raise that floor, they're going to get lifted so we can get hands-on to do whatever we need to do. Next, please. And we can also back the transport truck right up to the pool if we need to. Next. But most of the time we're using a piece of equipment, this telehandler. Not only does it save our backs, but also there's a scale on there. So it's really important to get an initial weight because weight gain, usually these animals are sick, injured, they haven't been eating. So they usually come in underweight, and weight gain is a big part of what we do in rehab. Next, please. This just shows you there was a lot of activity this day. We were actually, with our great partner SeaWorld, we were swapping animals. They brought us 2. We gave them one almost 1,700-pound animal that they were going to take for us and release. It was just something we were coordinating. So a lot of activity here, but you kind of can get a maybe better feel for what it's like. Next, please. And then just a little closer look, that scale hanging from the fork of the telehandler, and it's just how we lift them and get a weight on them. Next, please. Also, we're pit tagging, microchipping this manatee. Every manatee gets a microchip so that down the road, you have to be right on them with the scanner, but so that down the road we can identify animals if we need to. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's via carcass, but not always. Sometimes we have a repeat rescue. You can't always identify them easily, and we always scan for a microchip. If you recognize that handsome fellow in the brownish shirt, that's Peter Gross, the host of Wild Kingdom. And they were shooting an episode. This was just a couple of years ago, and we were part of that episode. Next, please. And then, so just want to talk about some specific cases again trying to give you an idea of the work we do. This is Queens Harbor right here in Jacksonville on the Intracoastal. This was thought to be a carcass, and the FWC person approached. I think they had a kayak. They had a report of a dead manatee. Well, little Percy was not dead. Showed some movement, so it turned into a rescue. Next, please. And this is her returning to us from SeaWorld. She went to SeaWorld for a short time, but I wanted you guys to see how our lift floor operates when we're lowering animals. A lot of noise, but you get to see what it's like to lower an animal, and that lift floor is just boat lift equipment. could have gone a little more deep, given her a little more water, but anyway, you get an idea of what it's like there. Next, please. And another animal, on that photo on the left, this is Mr. Inigo Montoya, and he was thought to be a carcass too when they approached him and they saw some movement, so he was rescued. He was basically, for lack of a better description, in a coma, and we were with him around the clock for 3 weeks, 24/7. Through the night, we had a staff member there. Even though he had that life jacket, we were worried about him not being able to get his nose out of the water to breathe. And also it was cold, winter time, so he had that thermo blanket on him. And because he was exposed, because he had to be partially out of the water because of his condition. So that's why he had to have the blanket on him. So next, please. This is a video, the first time he started eating, and you can hear him. You guys are witnessing something unique because manatees don't usually eat out of the water like that. Because of his situation, his mouth is out of the water. So I don't know if you guys know how lucky you are to experience this. But this was the first time he ate. We have it in the records, but it was probably close to a week. And this is the first time he finally started eating. So we can tube them for nutrition, but still, we want to get these guys eating, of course, on their own. But next, please. So this is a rescue in St. Augustine, but next, please. This is a boat strike, and because that animal is relatively small, we were able to send him to a local facility and get an MRI. Next, please. And you can just get, with radiographs at the zoo, it's really tough to get good images. But that MRI shows you can see those broken ribs on the left. You can see clearly through one. And then I forget how many you can try to count, but there had to be 7 or 8 broken ribs on this poor guy. But next, please. And then this was our 34th release. There was a group of kids. Yeah. I'll turn to Bill from FWC.
What do you think, Bill?
What do you think? Bill says he was ready to go. We release them at these public boat ramps normally, so they just happen to be a group of school kids, and they got a pretty neat experience. But that guy was ready to go for sure. And they're not always that spunky, but we like to see them spunky because it does help us feel like they are ready. So, and then a little more detail on this was a case, an animal that was with us the longest, Asha, 2 years almost. So she came in on the 21st. This is at the rescue site. She started sloughing skin off immediately. Next, please. And continued. So the outer epidermis is that thin gray layer. The next layer of the dermis is about 1 inch thick, and she was sloughing all that skin off. Next, please. Be ready. I think, let me see what's, maybe next there it is. So not as bad as it looks. Sorry. It's actually good. Good news right there. Healthy tissue bleeds. So we took her to surgery to debride that necrotic tissue. And then, lo and behold, she recovered. And here she is at her release at Blue Spring. They chalk the scars, even though she has really prominent scars. They run chalk around there just so they show up better in the photos. And then they're getting measurements too. So she was released. And here she is with a satellite tag. This is Blue Spring in the run. And next, please. Just thought it was kind of cute. Asha hooked up with Brutus, the largest male at Blue Spring. She was always really social. She was with us almost 2 years, so she saw a good number of animals come and go from our facility, and she was always quite social. Next, please. So this is, can't see great, but this is her movements heading north on the St. Johns River from Blue Spring. And about 10 days after her release, her satellite gear was recovered at the south end of Lake George. And the experts, the partners that monitor animals, could tell it was cut off. So a person cut off her satellite tag, not a propeller, and which is unfortunate. Maybe they thought they were trying to help this animal that was dragging a buoy around, but It also could have been malicious, and unfortunately, that's what I lean towards. Not everybody loves manatees or the speed zones and all that. So anyway, so that was back in February. We started to worry about poor Asha because the reason why we tag them is to monitor them throughout hopefully the next year and also see them return to the warm water. So lo and behold, the next reported observations of Asha were in Jacksonville. 2 different observations in June 2023. The first one was at the foot of the Dames Point Bridge, and that's what this photo is. And then the other reported observation, was upstream on the Trout River, where the zoo is located. So she literally had to swim past the zoo. And of course, I kid myself that she missed us. But it was just kind of neat that she was so close. And unfortunately, this one didn't end well because the next winter, I think it was January, the following January, her carcass was recovered in Green Cove Springs from cold stress. So she did not make it back to the warm water. Again, the whole reason why one of the main reasons we satellite tag them is to make sure they make it back to the warm water, because their orphans are naive. They didn't learn from mom that first 2 years where the warm water is. So it was just really, it happens. They all don't make it, the ones we release. We know that for a fact. But just the fact that someone interfered just kind of hurt a little more. So, but life goes on. Rehab goes on for us for sure. Next, please. So just wanted to mention a big event starting back in December of 2020. So the winter of 2020-2021 was a rough winter for manatees. The Indian River Lagoon is where the Cape Canaveral Energy Center is, and that warm water outfall used to attract numbers over 2,000 manatees. So if you think of a population that's somewhere around 8,000, a quarter of the population is aggregating at the Indian River Lagoon in the wintertime. And so for years, the poor water quality, nutrients getting in the water, causing algal blooms, blocking the sunlight, causing the grass to die that the manatees feed on. That was going on for years. I heard about it for probably 10 years or more, and it all came to a head that winter, and hundreds of animals starved to death. Next, please. So this just gives you an idea. This is actually Crystal River. They aggregate at either the springs. Anything below 68 degrees for a long period of time is too cold for manatees. We heard in that video that they don't have that layer of blubber like seals and dolphins and cetaceans and other cetaceans. So they have to have relatively warm water. Even though I'm sure a lot of you have gone swimming in the springs, which are about 72, not warm. So next, please. This is just a power plant aggregation. I'm not sure which power plant. That's not Cape Canaveral, but just showing you where they aggregate. Next, please. So 2021 is highlighted there on the left, and then if you go to the right, you can see 1,100 manatees died that year, and that's total for the state for the whole year. But the average, you can see how much it was up by hundreds. Probably I never did hear an exact number, but probably that year alone, 400 or 500 manatees starved to death. And the total, the UME technically is still going on, but certainly we're not seeing large numbers starving or anything. But probably closer to 1,000 animals ended up being affected by the lack of food in the Indian River Lagoon. So a tough time for manatees for sure. So water quality is key on all this. Next, please. Also, sorry, in 2021, you can see our numbers. Like I said, we're pretty small, but we doubled the number of animals that came in, and they certainly all didn't make it. But that was a busy year, and the following years were somewhat busy as well. So next, please. Just a quick couple of slides. The St. Johns River, I borrowed this from a colleague, the St. Johns River Keeper. I stole a couple of slides from a presentation she did that I kind of did a little part of. I hope she doesn't mind. But anyway, just to give you guys an idea that the St. Johns River is not perfect either. Not as, maybe the issues not exactly the same as the Indian River Lagoon, but next please, the sea levels rising, climate change. We're seeing changes in salinity. So we know Jacksonville is always brackish, but the salinity is increasing, and that's causing changes in vegetation, and it's affecting manatees and all kinds of wildlife. So things aren't perfect out there for sure. Next, please. So at the Jacksonville Zoo, we've already made a pretty nice commitment to manatee conservation, but some of you may have heard we are well into construction of a new critical care rehab facility and also a new front entrance, and that's what this is showing. That white, strange-looking thing is a canopy, and so that's the front entrance, and then as soon as you enter, the first thing you're going to see is our new manatee rehab facility. Next, please. And you can get an idea at the kind of top left, you can see those two little tiny pools. They look tiny. That's our current facility, and you'll cross the train tracks, and the new facility is there. Next, please. We're going from about 60,000 gallons of water right now to about 330,000 gallons. So big, scary increase for me, but very, very exciting too. And we're basically going to quadruple the number of manatees we can rehab. So again, scary and exciting at the same time. Next, please. And then an artist's rendition. Yeah, I don't think it's going to look exactly like this, but I think, are those mountains in the background? I'm not sure what that is. So, but you get the idea. Next, please. And I just want to mention our Manatee Rescue and Rehabilitation Partnership, the MRP, is all the folks that are doing the rescues, rehab, release, and monitoring. And it's a pretty impressive organization. Next, please. I've always felt pretty fortunate to be involved working with all these folks. You can see them all there. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service oversees everything manatee, but also the state, FWC, they're responsible for rescues and carcass recoveries. So we work closely with those two organizations for sure, but you can see some of the other partners. Really pretty impressive group. The University of Florida, U.S. Geological Survey is in there. And also want to mention our out-of-state partners, Columbus Zoo, Cincinnati Zoo. They do great work. We actually send orphans up there because orphans are normally healthy, but they have to stay in for sometimes a year or more. They have to be big enough for release. So we'll send orphans up there. They'll spend a year up there in Columbus or Cincinnati and then come down the following year. So those guys, I'm sure you guys can guess, it's not free to ship a manatee, to fly a manatee, and it's amazing the resources those facilities put in. And then Georgia Aquarium is another out-of-state partner that recently joined, and Texas State Aquarium is a pretty new partner. They don't have any manatees, but they're going to fill a niche. We see manatees all along the Gulf Coast, especially in the summertime, so occasionally there's a need for a rescue in the Texas area, so Texas State Aquarium will help to fill a gap there, even if it's just temporary holding until they can get to a critical care facility in Florida. So again, a great group, and I'll mention the website if you want more information about the MRP. Next, please. This is the slides to give you an idea of what animals we have around us here in Jacksonville. Jacksonville University does aerial surveys periodically. This was back in May, and you can see, 189 manatees in the area. Most of them are in the Julington Creek, Orange Park area, Doctors Lake. That's where all the grasses are. So that's where most of the manatees are. But there, you can see they're throughout the area, and we've occasionally seen them from the zoo dock. Like I said, Asha swam by at some point. So they're around, but most of the animals are in the Mandarin, Orange Park area. Next, please. And going back to our first two patients that came in, that was Cassie and Buckeye. I'm not sure if this was a month or two after their release, but they really stuck together at least that first year. They were always seen together. And you can't see the buoys in this shot, but the buoys actually have the satellite transmitter. But I would get photos sent to me. You would just see two buoys together floating on the water. Made my heart warm knowing that I think they were orphans that were in facilities for quite a while, and so it must have been comforting for those two guys, those guy and gal, to stick together. And eventually they did separate, but pretty neat to see that. Next, please. And then, I don't know why, I just thought this was interesting, but a white shark feeding on a manatee carcass. We don't know for sure, but I'm sure that shark did not kill that manatee. It was a carcass that floated out. But this is right off of either South Georgia or North Florida. My son surfs, and I didn't know up until a couple of years ago when OSearch was reporting about white sharks out here. But I don't know. Keep an eye out for white sharks if you're out there. But next, please. Just wanted to mention the Right Whale Festival coming up in November. A great festival. It used to be at Jack's Beach. Now it's up in Fernandina Beach. If you get the chance, it's a great festival. But it's meant to bring awareness to the North Atlantic right whale, highly endangered. But the only known calving grounds are off the coast of North Florida and South Georgia, and that's where this photo was taken. This is off of Jacksonville, I believe, and that is Jacksonville water right there. So beautiful, and they are. Sometimes you can actually see them or see the spout from shore because they're in relatively shallow waters. Some of you may have seen that. I thought I did one year. Looked out from a hotel we were staying at. I ran for the binoculars in my vehicle, and then never saw anything else. So, but yeah. Anyway, it's a great festival if you get the chance to go to it. Free festival up there. Next, please. And then just wanted to give folks an idea of what we all can do to help manatees and really help the environment. It's not just for manatees, and I truly believe if we're helping manatees and other wildlife, we're really helping ourselves. So big one, mentioning that Indian River Lagoon, the UME, nutrients getting into the water is a big problem. Fertilizer, lawn fertilizer, agricultural runoff, septic tanks leaking. So anything we can do to help with that. And even if, I appreciate a nice green lawn, so I respect that, but follow the instructions. You know, you're inevitably going to get some of it onto the driveway or into the road. You know, grab that blower and blow it back onto your grass, and just follow the instructions there. I thought and I stole this list from the FWC website, but that second bullet, pick up dog waste. I was surprised, honestly, to see that on there. But I wholeheartedly agree. No matter what, even if it's not helping manatees, pick up dog waste. That's a good thing. So, next, please. And then if you're a fisherman, that fishing line, as you saw in that one slide, it's terrible what it does to manatees, and I'm sure affects other wildlife. So anything you can do to take care of your fishing line, not always easier said than done sometimes, I realize. For any boaters out there, of course, following all posted speed limits, keeping your distance. I get out there and paddleboard a little bit, and I was on Pottsburg Creek, not far from here, and I saw a manatee in the distance, and there were no boats around, and he looked up, and I think he saw me, and then gone. So I was happy that he, was staying away from people, but I wanted to get a little closer look. But anyway, it definitely kept my distance at that time. But and then wearing those polarized sunglasses. Next, please. It helps you see much better, and in Jacksonville, you're not going to see, the water's not clear, so you're not going to see well, but you're looking for these circular boils, we call them, footprints. This is from the zoo. I took these pictures, but you'll see a sequence in the water, and if you see that, you want to steer clear, because that's a manatee swimming along. Next, please. And then, anything, if you ever see a manatee that you think could be you're not sure, possibly in distress, don't hesitate to call that FWC hotline, and that's the same hotline to report any wildlife issue. I mentioned our MRP website. You can get some more information there, and you can see manatees that are being tracked via satellite, get an idea of their movements on that website. I ask or recommend us just support the MRP partners if you want to help manatees. And next time you're renewing your tag, you might want to think about a manatee license plate. It does really help. That money does help. And then finally, I just recommend, if you can, get out there and try to see a manatee in the wild. I think most people will find it hard not to want to help them, or at least not run over them with your boat. if you get a chance to see them out there in the wild. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.